coming up on the Lead Ministry Podcast.
So this heightened sense, you can get addicted to that. We'll talk about that. Hear me out. We can be drawn to this sensation or this buzz that comes from drama, danger, or destructive things.
Now your host, Josh Denhart.
Hey, welcome back everybody to another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. My name is Josh Denhart. I'm grateful that you're here. We're in the middle of this series about burnout, and how appropriate is that? I think it's extremely appropriate. And I gotta let you know, burnout is real. And I myself experience it. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. But we're grateful that you are here. We want to help you. We want to help you to be prepared and to understand the circumstances around you that ministry is kind of inflicting upon you, and that you could have some tools in your ministry toolbox to stay in it for the long haul so that you can hear those wonderful words, well done, good and faithful. Well, here's my good and faithful kind of co-host, Bill. Grateful that you're here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is fun. This will be good. This has been a fantastic series and a lot of response, man. People are appreciating this, and I'm appreciating it as well. Bill, I got to say, as we kick into this, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about having friends, ministry friends, somebody who's outside of your church, outside of your town. And check this out. The guy that led me to the Lord 30 years ago, we still pray together 2 times a month on the regular. And
wow,
today was our day. And I was like, I just confessed to him that I was tired, and that, Bill, I do a lot of ministry coaching around the country, and I am helping people with a lot of difficult things, typically difficult things that revolve around some of the drama and trauma inside of their church. And it was so refreshing, as I was expressing to him some of my burnout. Let's get real, right? As I hear these hard things, it's very challenging sometimes. And he started to tear up, and he said, do you realize the bullseye that's on your back? And that of course that the enemy of God is going to want to seek to knock you and others who are in ministry, knock you out of the game. And so I'm not afraid to say that I'm, that over this last weekend I experienced kind of a little bit of a low, and went out and did a training someplace. And when the training was done, the leader that brought me out pulled me aside and told me the harsh story of their church for the last 2 years. And I was like, dude, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. Right. And so how powerful it is to have a prayer partner who teared up and prayed fervently. And his words were super, super encouraging to me. So get out there, find yourself a friend, and pray. But today, buddy, we're talking on the Lead Ministry Podcast in this series about burnout, this secret killer of ministry, our nemesis, right? Burnout. We're talking about how to avoid it, but today's an interesting one. We're talking about police officers and how police officers and pastors are very similar, and how we're talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Kind of some interesting stuff. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fun fact about me actually is before I got into ministry, right before I got into ministry, I had signed up to actually go to the police academy.
You're kidding me. I had no idea.
And I was going to be a police officer. And then it was kind of like, I kind of had told God, like, if I don't get into school to be a pastor, I'm going this route. And then it was a resounding, you're supposed to be a pastor.
Oh, my word. Well, I'm grateful.
Yes.
But, Bill,
my wife thinks I would be a terrible police officer, by the way, because she's like, you're far too nice to be a police officer.
Well, you are pretty nice. You would have figured it out. But that's cool, though, because this I had no idea, things we learned. Well, today we are talking about police officers and some relatively common comparisons between police officers and pastors. We're talking about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Well, as you know, on the podcast, we talk about these 3 big buckets. We're going to talk about defining it. We're going to define parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. We're going to develop it and take it a little bit deeper. And then we're going to give you a challenge for how you can actually implement some of the key things we've talked about today. So let's kick it off. What is, from a definition standpoint, the parasympathetic nervous system? Well, para means next to or beside. So parasympathetic. Well, what is the sympathetic nervous system and what is the parasympathetic nervous system? Well, let's start with the sympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for your body's fight or flight response. All of a sudden, you're driving along and somebody almost hits you. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in a whole bunch of protocols and your body goes into this fight or flight response. Now, Bill, what do you personally experience in your psychology and in your physiology when you experience a fight or flight response? What happens to you?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I was going to actually ask you the same thing because I think it's so interesting. But science tells us that you actually tend towards one or the other, right? Like, not that you couldn't do either, but that you tend towards one or the other.
Yeah. But ultimately, what happens is your body dumps in epinephrine, otherwise known as an adrenal response or adrenaline. Okay, here's your kidney, and on top of your kidney sits this wonderful, it's like a little helmet or a hat, and it's your adrenal gland. It sits on top of your kidney. And when you have this danger's coming your way, it's going to spit out adrenaline, and it's going to cause this cascade effect. Your eyes are going to dilate more because you're going to be able to take in more information. You're going to have a complete burst of extra energy to be able to lift off a car or be able to fight off an attacker or be able to run super fast. So you have this keyed up sense, this manic state of alertness. I mean, we've all been there, am I right? Right.
And this doesn't happen really in your logical brain. This is a reaction without thinking.
Yeah.
Just what happens to you. I would say that for me, I am definitely a fight person.
Okay, tell us more.
And the way I know that is because, well, a few instances in my life. One that sticks out to me is my wife and I were at this rummage sale, and we had gotten a bunch of things, and all of a sudden, this person's walking in their house, and their dog got out and went right at my wife, like just barreling towards my wife. And without thinking or anything, I literally just turned towards the dog, squared my shoulders, and stomped my foot like right in front of the dog before it got to me. And that movement like freaked the dog out and it ran away. And she was like, "That was crazy."
Yes, but you had this innate response. That's the thing, is that we have, scientists call it our upper brain and our lower brain. The lower brain, they've often called it our reptilian brain. It's something that kicks in. It is more automatic. It is not our logical brain. It is our reactionary brain. And it is not, okay, here's the deal. We could do an entire podcast on this, but it's your frontal lobe or your logic brain. Your lower brain is like, dude, we're not even checking in with you. We don't care. This is dangerous enough. We're overriding your logic. And that's really kind of both a good thing and it's a bad thing. Because there are times where you could get triggered and you can go back in time. You can go, oh man, I remember when that guy almost attacked, or that dog almost attacked my wife. There is no dog around you, but even remembering that, you can all of a sudden start getting keyed up. I bet that if I had you close your eyes and we went through this exercise, I could get your sympathetic nervous system to kick in, and I could get a micro adrenal response from that situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I bet that's true. Yeah. But there's been so many instances in my life where it's like, do you flee or are you going to fight? And I think just my reaction is always towards like, I'm going to face this head on.
Yes. And your body has equipped you with dilating your pupils so that you can see the world a little bit more clearly, and it's giving you extra strength to do so. Now let's talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for your body's rest and digest response. It is now counteracting the fight or flight response that the sympathetic nervous system throws in. Okay, so what we're seeking to do is the parasympathetic nervous system is seeking to promote relaxation and the conservation of energy, to where all of a sudden the sympathetic is like, throw all of our resources, every single one of them, at danger stopping. Okay, so
this is kind of like the gas and the brakes.
Yes, 100%. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, like the sympathetic nervous system is essentially like put the gas on whether you're fleeing really quickly from something or you're facing it head on. And parasympathetic is like pump the brakes. We need to come down off of this high.
Come down off of this high. Yes. Okay. Now watch this. Something bad has already happened when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Something bad has happened. You've had a reaction. Like all of a sudden, like something terrible happens at church and you're like somebody came at you. Some angry parent is literally like a mama bear is looking to destroy you. Whoop! Mm-hmm. You are now keyed up. And even though you're not going to fight them, your body doesn't know the difference. Your sympathetic nervous system or your reptilian brain is like, danger. Not checking with my logical side to see if Connie actually could take me out. It's your reptilian brain is not checking to see is it logical that this person is going to try to kill me? No, it's like, this is a dangerous situation. And so then your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in after something traumatic has kind of happened. Okay, moving on. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system, this idea of rest and digest and put the brakes on, it is occurring after your body has entered into a hypervigilant or manic state. You're keyed up. It's kicking in once this manic state or this sense of high alert is in full measure. And what's difficult is that we as humans can get addicted to the buzz of this manic state. And you think that this is kind of like, it's kind of, I'm not saying it's exciting, but there's adrenaline is you're up, you're on, and it's almost like taking a whole bunch of Adderall. You know what I mean?
Right. So this is like when they say people are adrenaline junkies, and
yes.
they are like, they go into increasing levels of danger when it comes to like, usually it's applied to people who like do extreme sports where it's like, I jumped out of a helicopter on my snowboard and went down this mountain, and then like that's not enough, so now I'm gonna skydive without a parachute and grab it midair, and like
that's it. And so what's happening is that sense, it actually, I don't think it feels good. I think it feels terrible. I don't like that keyed up sense, but there is a buzz factor to it. And later on, I'm going to talk about my own personal experience as it related to getting sort of addicted to this adrenal response. Now, here's the interesting thing. It takes the parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes, or the rest and digest to undo the fight or flight. It takes about 20 to 24 hours for us to return to normal. That's intense, isn't it?
That is very intense.
So,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
I'm thinking about this. So is this why so many ministry leaders that I talk to, they like do Sunday morning and they're like on hard on Sunday morning, and they're dealing with all the fires, all the things, and then it's like immediately Sunday afternoon and Monday, you feel like you are just like a deflated balloon.
You feel trashed.
Yes.
This
exactly
is exactly what is happening. And your body is now, it's out of kilt. And now the parasympathetic nervous system is like, hey guys, can we return to normal? And so it's throwing in a whole bunch of conditions to reset. And so then all of a sudden, I mean, Charles Spurgeon said that he would experience flu-like symptoms the next day.
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy. Yeah, I've
been there.
Experienced that for sure, yes.
That you're so unbelievably trashed, and you're like, I used to think that I'm just trying to be honest with you. I in my immaturity, Bill, I used to think, wow, is this the enemy of God? No, maybe the enemy of God is going to like capitalize on the idea that I'm in recovery, but this is biology.
Right.
And so
like essentially you need a nap.
I need a nap, and I also need to go into Sunday morning differently, that I'm not putting myself into an adrenal response.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the mature piece. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We need to figure out, it's not just about recovery. It's about, dude, can you keep yourself from getting into a manic, keyed up, hyper state on a Sunday? Because if you can, then your body doesn't have to throw the parasympathetic nervous system's weight into the program. I don't want it to come into the program because I don't want to become so keyed up that my body is on high alert. Can I do things that don't make it high alert? Okay, so let's talk about cops now. Cops and pastors, police and pastors, how are they similar? Well, a cop may experience a shooting, a domestic violence thing, a car crash, chasing a bad guy, and then running down the road and fighting that bad guy, like physically fighting. Now, I have to tell you, everything that I'm talking about today comes from personal experience. It's not because I was a police officer. It's because I had a couple of friends who were police officers. They went to our church, and I got to know them as friends. And one of them cried in my office from a counseling standpoint and was like, you know, I don't know how to come down from the idea that I just flipped a human body over to identify them because their back and their entire room had just burned to crisp. And I just flipped them. What? Like, or I've been back to this house for the umpteenth time because of a domestic abuse thing. And I'm keyed up. And then I got to go home around my kids and I'm freaking out. Well, guess what? They're experiencing a super adrenal response. Their sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive. Well, guess what? Pastors, sudden death of a baby. And all of a sudden, you're sitting at home, you're watching TV, you're winding down, and then you get the call. Maybe it's a sinful mess in a marriage. Maybe it's deep debt in divorce. Okay? I'm sorry. Every one of these are my own personal stories. Sorry. Right? I'm on sabbatical, Bill. I'm on sabbatical. The church has been like, hey, you've worked hard. You've been here this many years. You get 4 weeks and a small stipend of money to recover. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then, you know, if you're a beloved pastor at the church, when somebody has a tragedy, they're coming to you. You're the one they have a connection with. And so all of a sudden somebody had a stillborn baby. And I got that call. And so I came out of calm sabbatical to, holy smokes, this is my first funeral of a stillborn baby. I was pretty keyed up. Sinful mess in a marriage. Oh, drama. Not even going to go there. It'd peel the paint on your walls. I'll tell you what. Deep debt. Had a guy come to me and he was like, hey, my marriage is falling apart. I need your help. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he comes into my office and he goes, we're $86,000 in credit card debt and my wife wants to leave me. And I was like, brr. 86,000. And so all of a sudden now I'm thrown in. I did not make this mess, but now I'm a part of helping with this mess. That would cause me to be keyed up. Ugly church split. Now our church didn't go through a church split. It underwent a very well managed church split. No, it was nobody would have known that it was a church split. But when 250 really, really, really godly people who are strong givers and strong servers, they all exit your church, son, that's called a church split. Also, a psycho parent accosts you in the hall. This is the pastoral equivalent of the cop having his sympathetic nervous system kick into overdrive. Bill, am I right or am I wrong?
Oh, you are so right. This describes what pastors can experience. I've never really associated it with police officers, but it is kind of interesting to think about like how police officers, you know, they deal with these like crazy things and then they're expected to go home and just be normal, right? And like maybe we understand that on some level, but like it's the same thing with pastors. Like you could be sitting in your office in an afternoon dealing with the grievous results of sin in a marriage. And then 15 minutes later, you drive home and you're supposed to be completely normal with your home life.
Oh, dude, it took me years to even understand this herk and jerk sense of it was so complex. Now, here's the funny thing, Bill. When I had this cop in my office and he was crying, and he said, if I go to my supervisors and I say I'm experiencing emotional difficulties, that gets on my permanent record and I don't get advanced. So I can't go to my supervisors. And we kind of talked about that. And then he said, you know what the weird thing is? And I said, what? And he goes, you deal with the living. Like, these people live on. I deal with the dead. I just walked up to a car crash and see this bloody nightmare and somebody's dead. And I was like, so traumatizing. He goes, you deal with a car crash in your office of two human beings and then they still live on. So we had this moment where we're like, we have similarities. Okay. Now watch this. Here's a big danger. There is a buzz associated with the chemicals released by the sympathetic nervous system that the parasympathetic nervous system has to tap down. Am I making sense?
Yep.
So this heightened sense, you can get addicted to that. We'll talk about that. Hear me out. We can be drawn to this sensation or this buzz that comes from drama, danger, or destructive things. Because all of a sudden, you're so keyed up, and then we talked earlier about the Monday blues, the pastoral Monday blues, right? Where all of a sudden you're like, something's wrong. I feel horrible. No. Your body is resetting itself. This is a good, you want to be back to normal. But all of a sudden, when you're in that interim state, you feel horrible. And so you're like, okay, wait, I got a remedy. Let me go do something really crazy so I can get myself keyed up again. You can begin to normalize the idea that being in that heightened manic state is good.
Ooh, that's a dangerous path for sure.
Now, Bill, have you ever seen the movie? Oh, Bill, I shouldn't have even brought this up if I didn't know the name of it. Hang on. The Hurt Locker.
Yes,
it's a war movie where
Jake
the dude
Gyllenhaal.
and he's seeking to undo bombs.
Oh, the bombs. Yes. I have seen that.
All of a sudden he does this, and it's this really insane thing that he does, and people are like, "Bro, this guy's crazy." And then he goes home and he's standing in the like grocery store with like some really cheesy, echoey music playing, and he's looking at all of these foods in the frozen food section. And he can't take it. And so he signs up to go back. And you're like, okay, I don't get it, but now I get it.
Yes.
And so that's so this true. Addictive piece. So we begin to overwork because we subtly crave the drama of hard things. We start looking for that high or that buzz that we get from our body's response to the sympathetic nervous system kicking in. But our body is seeking to go, time out, we can't live here. So it's throwing in the parasympathetic, tap it down. It's this big jump back and forth, but we can get addicted. When we don't have that manic sense, we can go try to find it because that feels more normal. Yikes. So that's what we're talking about today. Wow. This is the whole point of today's podcast. We begin to associate, this is the dangerous part, we begin to associate being home with emotionally low times. Like, this is boring. I feel depleted. I feel upset. I don't feel like this is. So then we begin to associate work and ministry with high emotions and high endorphins and this sense of go, go, go. So therefore, we feel low emotions of home. We flee those and we run to the high emotions of work. Guess what? This is a serious recipe for burnout. Now, hear me out real quick. There are some people who are listening to this podcast and they're like, you know what? I agree. Everything you're saying is logical. It all makes sense, but they themselves have not personally experienced this. They may be newer to ministry, or maybe they're not being thrown into these insane kind of counseling, horrific deals, right? But if you look long enough, you're going to know somebody and you're going to be like, oh my word, I see that. I see those patterns.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the longer you're in ministry, the more you will experience some of these things, because people deal with traumatic things in life, and your job is to be with people.
Oh, dude, it's so hard. It is so hard. Okay, so get this. Home equals boring and lame. Work equals action and life. And so all of a sudden, you fall into this trap. This is a bad thing. So again, shooting, violence, car crash, chasing a bad guy, fighting a bad guy. That is work. Hyper, manic, super state. And then you come home and you feel this, as the parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in and you're coming off of that, your body doesn't like it sometimes. Okay. And so then all of a sudden you begin to crave it. So we begin to hunger for the high stress craziness of work at all costs. This is burnout. This is pastoral insanity. And I got to tell you, I've been there. Okay, hear me out. Couple the addictive nature of these chemicals, Bill, from the sympathetic nervous system and then the rebound of the parasympathetic nervous system. Couple that with the idea that we're doing good, both cops and pastors. And so all of a sudden, I feel this sense of insanity in manic state that I kind of get slightly addicted to those up feelings. Couple that with I'm doing good to stop bad guys, or I'm helping people. That becomes a really big twist, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Because you're saying like the only time that I'm really feeling right and doing good in ministry is when I'm keyed up to the highest level.
You're hitting on it. You're hitting on it.
Yeah, that is a dangerous pattern to fall into.
It is. And I'm telling you, I've experienced it myself. The only reason that I can write or come up with today's podcast is because I have absolutely, I know this world. I experienced it. So the high calling of pastors and police, it's laced with the addictive nature of endorphins. That is a recipe for burnout, 100%. That's what we're talking about today. So we struggle to be normal people.
For sure.
Because
this is not a librarian job.
No. You know, a librarian's job is like everything is quiet and shush. Like, right. Dude, I'm sorry that somebody misplaced the Dewey Decimal System and put this book in the wrong place. This is not the crazy time.
Yep.
Okay, so police, they can start to adopt an alter ego or cop self as their core reality. Police officers start to lose their sense of real self or true self. And they only identify with this keyed up manic state. In the same way, pastors can begin to adopt an ego, an alter ego, or a pastor self, where they start to lose their sense of who they really are. I lost my sense. And I remember my wife used to have to pull me aside and she would say, Josh, guess what? You didn't do that. You are so strung out and freaked out. You didn't do the $86,000 credit card thing to our family. You didn't step out egregiously with, we won't even go there. You didn't do that. And so you're you're keyed up. Like, this is not your life. And you being the fix-it guy is also not your life. That's actually what you do for a job. Come home.
Yes. That's so important. I think the other aspect to this that could help or could happen is you try to, like, if you're not careful and you're always seeking that like keyed up high, then what could happen is you end up trying to recreate that like, you know, sympathetic sort of feeling at home by like introducing your own drama, your own, you know, like that.
Yes.
If you're always bringing it in, you could, and I think that happens in ministry as well. Like you bring home that like heightened crazy state of manic,
you're bringing manic to the home. And you're overcorrecting your kids. You're not at peace. You're yelling, or you start drinking alcohol to tap that down.
Sure.
I've known a lot of pastors starts doing self-destructive things to try to tap that down. and not wait for the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in and do the rest and recovery the natural way. It's very, very, very dangerous. So the cop self versus the parent or spouse, the pastor self versus the parent or spouse. It's very, very, very dangerous. Confession, I have been addicted to ministry, drama, and hard things. # fact. I'm confessing that. I don't live there anymore. But it's a well-worn path for anybody who's been in ministry for a decade or more.
Yep. I hate to admit it, but I would have never said to you that what I was doing was being addicted to the high stress of ministry. But I would say that there have been seasons for sure where I've gone home and been like, it's kind of boring at home,
right?
It's just not, just not what it stimulates me.
Right. And so I've got to reset that sense of stimulation. If we're not careful, we're going to begin to lose a proper sense of reality, and we identify as a human ministry machine. That's what you are just saying, Bill. And now tell me if I'm wrong. Did it kind of just occur to you now that that's happened to you?
Oh yeah, I know. I would have never. I didn't have the terminology or the framework for it until.
Okay, so that's my prayer through this podcast, that somebody out there is going to be like, "Dang, I see that trap. I'm not going to step into that trap." Well,
yes.
So we're going to close this out. We're going a little bit long today, but how do we avoid this dark ministry addiction? Well, find ways to save our time off. This is the antidote to ministry addiction. Here it is. Lean into the buzz of home, into the buzz of ministry at home, of reading quietly to your kids, or find ways that home is good. How about a hobby? Any interest outside of ministry that you can pour yourself into. That's going to be a distraction from work. You have to have something outside. Now, gardening. Here's what I did. I did this as a teacher. I did it as a pastor, and here's why. Because as a teacher or as a pastor, your work is never completely complete. Human beings, you get them in process as a teacher, and they leave in process. There is no final answer. In ministry, you're dealing with people, and you're seeking to disciple them or help them to grow and sanctify and all this stuff, but you never really have an end because people are always in flux. Am I right?
Right.
And so gardening, it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. I plant the stupid thing, I tend to the thing, and then I get the fruit, and then I destroy it all, and it's winter now. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it feels good. That is an antidote. How about cook killer food? There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end to that. I have found that cooking is a great release for me. How about exercise, right? This is, if you want to speed up the parasympathetic nervous system in order to combat adrenaline and this back and forth, exercise is going to help with that. Going for a really intense walk or doing some push-ups or some exercises, that's going to set you straight again. Now for me, national parks, being out in nature has been this really, really, really great thing. Going on a nature hike, or this buddy of mine says, I need to find out more about nature, Josh. Yeah, I do that. And I'll go to a national park or a state park, and I will listen to music, and I will just observe nature. And it truly helps me, and it helps center me again. So that's what we're talking about today. Bill, this is a complex topic. I think it's been eye-opening for me to put words to it. I think it's been eye-opening for you to be able to put words to it today.
Definitely has. Yeah, it really gave me framework for it, which is super helpful.
Yes, and so that's our hope, is that people can understand there is an addictive side to ministry, and let's seek to not feed that. And let's not be unaware that if something really hard happens on a Sunday, you're not abnormal if Monday comes a little harder for you.
Absolutely.
Understand the systems of the body. This is biology. It's not just spirituality. There's a biological component to this. If you got so keyed up and somebody accosted you and you had a really hard Sunday and you were adrenal fatigued a little bit on that Sunday, it's going to take time for your body to throw in the mechanisms to undo that, at least 20 to 24 hours. And so
Yeah,
be aware of what your body's doing. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's so helpful because I think for me, I automatically go to, okay, if I know that this is the dynamic that's happening, I have words for it now, then the way that I do my schedule matters. It's easy for me to say, okay, I know that the weekend after I preach and I'm really on as a preacher or there's an intense weekend, then Monday morning, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to go with the flow of what my body is telling me to do.
That's right. And you're going to allow for the natural resetting of the sympathetic to go down and the parasympathetic to kick in and reset. So I hope that people out there in podcast land can tuck this one away and they can have some language for their own ministry health. Well, gang, that's been it for today. Another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Lead Ministry Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and visit leadvolunteers.com for more episodes and resources. Thanks for listening,